Alright, everybody, today we're talking about the fur trade, and we're talking about mountain men. Now, these mountain men, a lot of them started out as Frenchmen from the area known as Quebec. Now, they had these trade networks with a lot of the Native Americans in this area. So, when you go to northern Idaho, yes, I'm making a political statement there. It's not North Idaho, northern Idaho. A lot of the names of the places are French. That's because Frenchmen came through and gave those places names. Now, this is the area we're talking about, modern day Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. British Columbia was also a part of the old Oregon country. Now, fur is... Can you pause? Just pause.
Yeah.
Got people here, but that didn't really keep people here. Because what kind of people are coming through? And really they're just passing through, they're not settling? Traders, trappers, merchants. So those people want to go back to where they came from and spend the money that they earned. What eventually, and this is skipping ahead a little bit, what eventually keeps people is farming. And most of those people are Americans a little bit later. We're going to be talking about the beginning, and eventually we're going to be overcome by events back east. But for now, let's talk about John Jacob Astor, America's first millionaire. And he wanted to set up a place near Fort Plaza where Lewis and Clark wintered. And that place would be called Fort Astoria. There it is.
I knew that.
And has anybody ever been to Astoria, Oregon? It's a very beautiful place. They have a huge column that you can walk up in. They're up the staircase, and they actually sell wooden airplanes that you can throw from the top, and they go forever. You been there?
Yeah, I think
Yeah, it's a pretty cool place, and you can see forever into the ocean, the river. So, this is Robert Stewart. Two leaders. One of two leaders sent by Astor. The other, Hunt, would go from the east to the west, overland. Overland, you hear that name around. You hear that name for streets. Like in Burley, Overland Road in Boise area, you have that. And that's because those are actually on the old Overland route. Stewart goes the opposite direction. He takes a boat, he takes a ship all the way around South America, because there's no Panama Canal yet, and he goes up the west coast to Astoria. That's where he starts. And he goes all the way to St. Louis. Now this is Hunt. And there's a place north of the river. You guys have probably heard of Hunt, Idaho. It's an area. You've heard of it?
I will hunt there.
Okay. Well, he starts in St. Louis, goes all the way through here. This is how he actually goes. You see, he goes through what becomes the Magic Valley. Now, Hunt took 65 men. And this is the route he's supposed to go. This is the old Lewis and Clark route. He's supposed to go exactly the way they went. But he went too late. He went too late and it started to winter. Winter came on. He had to take a more southerly route. So right here, it's all different. See? And he ends up going through Wyoming. here, what great national park is right here in Wyoming? Yellowstone. And he finds the source of the Snake River. He hears that the Snake River goes all the way to the Columbia River, which it does. And he's thinking, okay, this is like the best northwest passage we're going to find. So we're going to build canoes and go all the way down the Snake River. So how many people have gone down the whole Snake River? You have? Halfway. Why can't you go the whole way?
Too far.
Too far. But what else is there? Rapids and falls and horrible rocks that will smash your canoe. Which entered into. Okay, so he's entering into Idaho in October of 1811. Okay, so keep that in mind. They're going down the river, and they go quite a ways until they get, they built these dugout canoes.
I want to ride in one of those.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's pretty cool. The way you build them is like it's a whole, whole tree. And what you do, you have to burn this area. You have a fire, and you have to put the hot coals onto the wood right here, and that burns the wood and makes it easier. You have to use a hatchet to cut it out, and eventually, and that's how Lewis and Clark did it too. Now, they got quite a ways down the river until they came to Twin Falls County, and that's where they hit some rapids, and it destroyed their canoe, and they lost one of their members.
No.
He drowned.
Yes! What a bum! Imagine drowning.
What does that with
Now,
you?
because of the drowning,
He's a loser for that.
hey, no. Because of the drowning, they decide to walk the rest of the way. So they walk across. They miss Shoshone Falls. So Shoshone Falls isn't even discovered till several decades later, because there's too many rapids before that. So he comes through, and now this is winter time. He's walking through. Look outside the window. That is what he is walking through. And all his men who are still alive. Luckily, and this happened to Lewis and Clark, they needed the Shoshone Native Americans to help them. Lewis and Clark had to get horses from them. The hunt party had to be fed by them so that they could walk and make it to Oregon. They also got horses from the Nez Perce and canoes to travel on the Columbia River from the Wichita Indians, and they made it to Fort Astoria, February 15th. Okay, so October to February, the Ides of February, they are walking through this.
My favorite player though is
Okay, really cold and miserable. All right, Robert Stewart.
Camilla, camera's kind of shaky.
Boys, Robert Stewart starts from Astoria, goes up the Columbia River, and he stays pretty close to the Snake, and then he goes more of a southerly route here, and eventually goes to Missouri, goes back to Missouri. And Robert Stewart's route is the one that most people later on, and for decades and decades to come, to the late 19th century, you have Americans and other people who come from other parts of the world to the East Coast and want to settle and get their own land. They come to Oregon. And again, they want to settle in the Willamette Valley. And and that becomes known as the Oregon Trail.
Wow.
So, now, who had claims? Before I mentioned people who had claims to this land, who had claims? Imperial powers like Spain, like France, like Britain, like Russia, and we're the latecomers. The United States of America they're the latecomers. So, what do they do? What do they end up doing? How do they get a good claim to this land? Because they don't have trappers and traders coming here. Well, they do have some. They have actual farmers who are settling the land in the Willamette Valley, in the Columbia Basin, and they settle the land, and therefore it goes back to that old Spanish claim that Spain had everything except, unless you were able to cultivate the land. If you cultivated the land and Spain didn't have actual possession of it, then you would be able to lay claim to the land. So Americans come here and settle in large numbers, they farm the land, and they are able to claim Oregon country. It becomes Oregon territory, and eventually Oregon state. And that is the greatness of Robert Stewart, who helped bring people through Idaho into Oregon. All right, that's good.